So I do think one of the reasons I don't get promoted that much is because I'm gay.
And that is maybe one time when someone has found out that I'm gay.
And stop talking
to me. Yeah.
Not like gay.
Yeah, it's mud.
Mud, yeah.
But he's not mud.
He's mud. He lives in the swamp and he lives in the mud.
I see. The same Pokemon for two different reasons, from two different regions.
Regions, yeah.
And that's just like us. Two little gays from different regions of the world.
Hi, Tokyo Tops. So, usually we go to Tokyo Rainbow Pride every single year, but this year we try to celebrate the Rainbow Pride with a different format, and we want to talk about our coming out stories. Did we come out to our family or blah, 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 and how do we feel about it? Just talk about those experiences.
Mm-hmm. Are you going first?
Why don't we do our usual thing and let you go first and we'll do that?
First?
Yeah.
So mine's a bit of a short story. I was thinking about two stories versus coming out to my family versus coming out to my friends. And on the way here, I decided I think I'm gonna go with my friends. They were the people that I came out to first before my family. I guess that's probably pretty common for people. It reminded me, thinking about this story, how scary it was. I think it was even more scary than coming out to my family, again, because it was the first one. So I thought it would be a good story to talk about. So I was in grade 9. So I think that's somewhere between 14 and 15. So in Victoria, where I'm from, I lived quite far away from my high school, and I'd have to walk every day. And it was this path, about 30 minutes down to school. And my best friend, she and I would, after school, we would just loiter, essentially. We'd just fuck around and walk around. And we'd often kind of go along that path, either sometimes to her house, but sometimes towards mine, so that when we needed to split, it wasn't super far for me to walk back. And there was a school in the middle, a different school, a private school, and it had swings. And so we'd hang out there and just often just chat. And granted, I think this is 25 years ago, so I don't remember the story perfectly, but I remember us sitting on the swings, and for some reason we were talking about Will Smith.
Okay.
So I'm thinking maybe 25 years ago, there's probably some sort of I think my friend really liked Will Smith. And I'm also thinking that there was probably something around that time, he released a movie or whatever. And I think she was talking about him being attractive or something like that. And then it kind of
who doesn't think Will Smith
exactly.
is attractive?
That's where I joined in. And I was he is good looking. And then it was something along that lines. And then I think she picked up on it and was so do you like him? Sort of thing. And it kind of went from there. I'm not sure if I said the word I'm gay, but I remember the Will Smith conversation was the kikake for me coming out to her.
Oh my God.
And she was chill with it. She's my best friend. She wasn't, looking back on it now, of course, she was gonna love and support me, but at that time it was really, really scary. The thing that's interesting about this story, thinking back on it now, is I went back home and I have this memory of me staring at myself in the mirror in my underwear. And I'm pretty sure I was in my underwear because when I got home, I started freaking out. So when I got home, it was very much what have I done? Why did I tell someone? And, it felt very much like my world was crumbling in. And I think I was pretty much naked because I think I got really panicky and sweaty. And so it was taking off my clothes to cool off. And then I just remember staring at myself in the mirror. And then this is one of the few times, if not, I think I've had 2 of these experiences in my life. This is one of them. I had an out-of-body experience. It was really weird. And in a way, some people probably don't even believe that's a thing, having this sort of experience. But I remember I remember a lot of darkness, and I remember pretty much seeing myself from a third point of view, looking down at myself being what have you done? And I think it was a couple of hours. I think I remember I skipped dinner. My mom would call me, whatever, and I'd just be no. And I'd just lock myself in my room. Thinking back on that, I'm sad for myself at that time because it was I was obviously going through a lot of mental anguish. You know, once you tell, you know, someone, it can spread really quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like, I let the secret out. Of course, in the end,
Everyone knows that you are gay.
well, no, but and like my friend was super supportive, and she kept the secret. And like when I was ready to tell other people, you know, like she supported me and she backed me up with that. I think it was the next year in grade 10 was when I actually came out to like fully like my school. And so, you know, she supported me and kept that secret all to herself for that year. And then when I sort of drip fed, I guess, other people, it was some other bitch who told other people. Okay. Like later, like my best friend kept the secret, and then once I started drip feeding it to others, there was someone who decided to spread it to everyone.
It become like a Daenerys and like Jon Snow kind of like situation, right? Like they told Sansa about the thing, and then like Sansa just like
exactly. Yeah, so accidentally told Sansa somewhere along the way, but then that kind of worked out for me in the long run. I was so angry, of course, but because then it ripped the Band-Aid off really quickly, and everyone was pretty much supportive except for that bitch who outed me. She was trying to...
Do you still hold grudge?
I hope you're happy and fine wherever you are now, 25 years later.
I have a couple questions, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I watch a lot of like North American like movies or TV show growing up, and I think I'm a couple years like younger than you. But the information passed to China is a little bit like, or like after a couple years, then it got released in China, right? So watching like those teenager movies or things, they would be like, you and they would like pick on those like gay kids. Was that kind of like the environment that you were in?
So there were actually a bunch of gay people in my school. Well, I think there was 3 in my year. And that's a lot, I think, for that time, like grade 9, grade 10, for people to be out and stuff like that. For me, it was grade 10, so by that time we had 3 people. So I think I think I was the last person to come out, so I think by that time people were like, whatever. Like, to be fair, I think the two guys, they had a harder time. And I think I was in gym class with one of them as well, and it would be like, you know, the guys would be all kind of like, hey, it was pretty rough. And then by the time though that happened, I was ready for that sort of treatment. I remember actually in the gym, someone being like, you want to see this, don't you? You want to see it when the gym? And I was like, yeah, show me. And that shut them up really quick. But it was very scary for me to like sort of like go back on that. But it was actually a guy that I did really want to see. So I was kind of like, I'm just going to throw it there, you know?
And he ran away?
Yeah, and then he was just like, and then after that it stopped. I think I was also really lucky to have a lot of female friends who had my back. And these friends, including the friend that I came out to initially, stuck up for me a lot. And then even in the wider group outside of my group, a lot of the girls were just chill with me. So when their boyfriends or whatever would be they'd be like, stop being a jerk and stuff like that. So I think actually I've always thought that my high school days, I was very much saved by a lot of the women around me. Yeah.
And then you were fully open in college, I assume, or was it like another because you moved to another place, right? Or...
Yeah, I mean, everywhere after that, of course, this is the shitty thing about being gay is you kind of have to come out consistently over and over again.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like
harder.
It wasn't hard, and it wasn't also like from the get-go I was hiding something. It was I went to a new place, and then I was at a new school around new people, and then I was sort of open from the. Let's say that I was open from the get-go, so open to people as I moved forward. So I think I was out by the time I was 16.
Like fully out, and to your family as well.
Yeah, that's when I came out to my family too. Yeah.
Wow, super early.
Yeah, it was pretty early. Yeah.
But do you feel like coming out caused any trouble to you? Do you like feel regret sometimes? Like it's better just to stay in closet? Like, have you ever felt like that?
When I lived in Korea, I didn't come out to my host family because
they're Christian.
They were Christian, and I could also see. I remember a gay friend of mine came over one time to the house, and when he went home, my host mom was kind of making fun of him. Like he was a bit more feminine and stuff like that, and she was kind of like, oh, like Korean boys these days. And I was like, okay, so this is the environment we're in, right? And like I was living with them, and I wanted to play it safe, so I never came out to them. And I came out to all my other friends though. And when I left, I had a friend who stayed in Korea. So we were on exchange, but she decided to like sort of stay and continue to go to that school. And she is Christian. And so she would run into my host family a lot at church. Yeah. And eventually what happened is that they got a new person to come in to be like a homestay.
Yeah.
And we got along. I got along really well with the whole family. So when the new host kid came to stay, they would talk about me a lot. And then the guy was an American, and apparently what he said was just like, this guy sounds gay. And so he said it to my host mom, like, all these stories you're talking about, this guy's super gay. And I guess then she started thinking about stuff, and then she was like, oh my God, maybe he is gay. It was coincidental, like, this is my interpretation of the event, but I found that out because at some point she just stopped talking to me. And when I went back to Korea X amount of years later, couldn't get in contact with her, and I talked to my friend. I thought, it's so weird. And then that's when she told me the story. She's like, I was going to church with her, and eventually at some point she brought that up, and about like, not how I'm gay or whatever, but this new kid or whatever was talking about how you sounded gay. And I was like, when was that? And she was like, oh, a couple of years ago. And I was like, that's when I got cut off. And so I made that sort of assumption. And that is maybe one time, again, I didn't necessarily come out to her, but that was one of the few bad experiences I've had when someone has found out that I'm gay.
And stopped talking
to me. Yeah. And that was really unfortunate.
They had to, cast the thing out of
the house. Yeah, right? I mean, and that's the thing. They're probably like, oh my God, this guy lived with us and he was around, the family. But I would say that like 99% of the times that people found out that I was gay, 99% of the time has been totally fine. Guys, do you know that we have merch? We have a shirt. Show me your shirt. So it's been exactly 1 year since we released it. We did a collaboration with Torajiro-san. If you're watching, hi Torajiro-san. And we just don't advertise it enough. And it's an amazing shirt and an amazing piece of artwork by Torajiro-san himself. And so lucky to have him collaborate with us. Did I tell you I saw one of our fans the other day? They wore it.
You saw them in the wild?
Yeah, it was when he was traveling.
Okay.
At the end, he showed.
Oh my God, that's so cute. Thank you. Yeah.
So. And it's super cute. So please click the link below and grab a shirt for yourself.
I think I made a video about this topic, but I was speaking Chinese, so I would.
Oh yeah.
So I would just repeat my answer in English very quickly.
Well, but you don't have any other coming out stories?
I think this was the hardest because I never feel like super pressured or anything to hide amongst my peers. So yes, my real coming out, I think very meaningful to myself was actually to my mom. When she visited me in Japan in 2016, when I was living with my boyfriend, and my mom came here for vacation, and I introduced my ex-boyfriend as my roommate in the beginning. But then she came in and just seeing that we're very close to each other, like the things we do.
Like close to each other? You're like, hey,
No, we have
not a friendly thing to do.
Okay, come on, we have like a different bedroom. So we always think like sometimes we need like off time that we don't want to sleep with each other. So we kept our separate rooms.
And when she was here, you kept that thing you slept in separate beds. Okay.
Yes, yeah, so everything was very natural. My mom didn't think that way. She just thought like, oh, your Japanese roommate is very fun and very handsome and very nice. But then my boyfriend got very awkward, and he's like, I don't think we should do this. And so he took he went back to Kansai because his home is actually in Kansai. He went back for a couple of days, So my mom was with me, and I just feel so frustrated. I just feel like there's something I want to talk to her, but I couldn't, And even when I took her to Fujisan to view a flower field, whatever, I wasn't in a very good mood. I always feel like I was very pressed, but also like, there's it was back in my head. I was thinking like I'm so shameful, like I bring disgrace to my family because I'm gay. I couldn't tell them like who I am truly, right? And we were just having a very casual talk about like our childhood, and she's like, you know, like, do you remember that time we were in Beijing and blah, blah. It's like, I don't remember anything. And then we were talking, and she teared up. She's like, I just want to know, like, I love you so much. I really treasure like all of our memories together, especially the period of time that your dad was away from us. And, you know, we only had each other. And so I started crying. So at the moment, I was like very moved by the situation. So I slipped that like, Mom, do you know that like actually the guy is not my roommate? He's my boyfriend. And she was like, I kind of sensed it, like the way you look at him. I feel like it was a lot of...
Look at the camera like you look
I
at him.
can't do it right now. I mean, I don't...
You do like that?
I don't know, like she said, like the way you look at him, I could tell that it's not just friendship. Yeah. She didn't accept it. Like, I don't think she accepts it right now, but she also doesn't go against it. I mean, she sometimes still tell me like, oh, I would just wish you can be normal. And like,
Did she use that word normal?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like a generational gap. And like, oh, life's gonna be much easier if you just have a wife and have kids, you know? Like, I just think this route is very difficult for you. That's what she says.
So this happened when I came out to my family. I wonder if it happened with yours. Did they think it was a phase?
Well, she did mention that, like, I think if you just really meet a nice girl, that you're gonna,
so
you know, like a nice girl will, like a nice girl will do magic, you know, like you just haven't met a nice girl yet.
You just have not gotten that magical, you know?
So yes, I don't think even coming out to your family, it's not one-time thing. You have to come out over and over again. You have to kind of remind them that's the reality.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, yes, maybe a nice girl will suddenly appear and change my mind, but for now, accept the reality.
Were you bullied at all at school?
No, I'm always the popular kids.
Like none of the boys were like, oh, hey, you want this tool? You want this?
I think the first grade of middle school, how old were we? Like 12 or 13? That's the age, right?
Probably 13-ish. Yeah.
So there were like some really chalai guys were like very, how do you say, like youngster?
Sure, bad boys.
Bad boys. And they will force themselves onto girls. Like between classes, there's a small 10 minutes break, right? And they would be like, tongue kiss the girl.
So they were like molesting them.
Molesting them, yeah. And they were like, there was a guy and he would do that to the girls, also do to me as well.
In your mouth?
Yeah.
Okay. So were you just like after your class, like waiting out? Like,
I wanted to, but I have to hold my dignity, you know? So I have to close my mouth.
No, stop.
Well, let's going back to our coming out story, right? Like, so my mom...
Did your mom tell your dad?
Yes, I didn't tell my dad. My mom's like, don't ever tell your dad. I don't think he can handle it.
And then she was like, told your dad.
No, and she went back to China, right? My dad went to the airport to pick her up. And on like the moment she sat on the car, she's like, our son is gay. What should we do? You know? And she in Japan's like, you should never tell your dad. I don't think he can handle it. But my dad's reaction, I think you heard the story, but his reaction was like, it's fine. It's like, oh, the world is changing. So he understands that, but he also want grandchildren. So both of them do understand me, or like accept me as who I am right now. But they do still want a grandchildren. And I think maybe going straight, where like marry a girl and having a family, they think my life will become much easier. They don't want me to like suffer from the hardship of life, I think.
The hardship of being gay.
Yeah, of being gay.
Happy Pride.
Well, that's not the end of my story. But right now, what changed over the years is that I started to talk more, because in the beginning, I came out to them once. I feel like they kind of like bounce back to question your real sexuality. I shut down. I said like, I told you again. So I went into very defensive mode, being like, I didn't want to talk to them. Every time they call me, I just want to press the red button to, you know, like not answering the calls. But right now I talk to them very often, and I started to talk about my dating experiences with guys to them and ask for their advices as well.
Your dad has a lot of advice.
Well, yeah, he has a lot of comments.
Yeah.
But usually I would be talking to my mom directly, because I am closer to my mom, but my dad will be listening.
In the background, right?
Yeah, in the background. And sometimes he would jump in and be like, don't care about those kind of things and blah blah blah. But yes, sometimes I like, for example, I was dating the Singaporean guy last year, right? And my mom would call him Harry Potter because he wear glasses.
Okay.
Yeah, she would be like answering the phone, be like, so how's
Harry Potter?
Yeah, how's Harry Potter? Are you guys going well or anything? So that was kind of cute. I really enjoyed that kind of like daughter-mother relationship. Yeah, so me and my family are really good on the topic of me being gay, but at the same time, like they still want like grandchildren and give me like some social pressure as well. Yeah.
So have you ever regretted like coming out at all?
Sometimes yes, because I feel like it opens a lot of doors for me, but also like shuts a lot of doors for me as well. Kind of like if you start accepting you're gay, you have to put on a gay persona. Like I feel like then I'm always with the label of the gay guy. It becomes one of my identity. So I do think one of the reasons I don't get promoted that much is because I'm gay. I am such a sassy person, like I don't give a fuck. You know, like maybe it's just me. I'm not trying to represent everyone, but I just feel like because I have that persona, it makes me a little bit harsh and they don't think I work well with the team or blah, blah, blah. It can be all in my head because I have really good relationship with all of my coworkers like before, but maybe from a corporate lens that I'm not very qualified to be like promoted or managing a team or things like that.
I mean, I know back in the day, from a Japanese point of view as well, they were more likely to promote people who are like making families and
still is, I believe.
And that I guess what I was about to say is that it sounds that could maybe also be a factor as well.
I mean, that's why a lot of people, Japanese people don't come out.
Yeah.
It's because it will affect their career.
Yeah.
And I think it's true because I feel because of my gay persona or identity, I'm not being promoted a lot compared to my straight peers. In Japan, I think lots of like the after work drinking, nomikai toka, and they talk about their marriage and kids. And if you cannot get into that circle, then they probably think you have like less common, less in common, and probably think that like, oh, he doesn't probably need a promotion because he's single by himself. He doesn't need more money. So I understand that family's problem. So that person probably need a promotion more than that guy, you know, like who is single.
Yeah.
So
I do think that's also a worldwide thing. At least that idea of like, well, I have to take care of, I have to provide for my family or my kids. I think there's some weird thing in like companies that sort of aim towards that more, but I actually also think that people who have children are more likely to fight for that too, because literally they need the money for their kids, so they're more likely to be like, I need this promotion, I need this raise, if you can't give this to me, I need to leave the company because I cannot afford, whereas perhaps you and I are a little bit more like, I guess we'd be okay, maybe we're not as bold. And also I guess I can already hear the comments, ringing saying, maybe you need a job that's full of gay people.
Well, I don't think
environment would be entirely different.
But again, I don't think our companies are against. It's LGBT friendly companies already.
Yeah.
But still, like you cannot break the social norm so easly,
and that's also very Japan in the sense
it's embedded.
They can have laws that exist here, but the social laws are the ones that, in the end, rule. So yeah, if your company might be LGBT friendly, but if the environment is filled with people who are a little bit more old school, then as try as they might, they're still going to have some of that old school sentiment in the environment.
Yeah, so that's the only situation I feel like I regretted coming out. But after you enjoy the freedom, how can you go back to the shell?
Exactly. I think that's it.
Then I have to come out because I came out so many times back in school to my family already. I cannot go back to that place anymore. Yeah.
I think once you do come out, you realize it's such a weight off your shoulders. Even if you have some bad experiences or whatever, it's like if we get back to what you were talking about before about the nomikai or whatever, going out with your coworkers after work to talk. If you're in the closet, you're having to like do all this fake conversation, and sort of play along with their game. It's that's so tiring. And when you don't do that anymore, you realize later how much weight has been lifted off of you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thinking about going back, I wouldn't want to go back at all.
So overall, I still like so very confident with my decision. Like I'm so glad that I came out to everyone. Yeah.
That was our
coming out stories.
Yeah. Leave us a comment and let us know how your coming out experience was like, if you feel comfortable doing so, in like 1 or 2 sentences or whatever, and have a sharing conversation going. It'd be really interesting to hear some of your experiences as well. And apart from that, happy Pride and see you next time.